The Wellness Show, episode 168. Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. And this afternoon, I'm pleased to be talking to Amy Jo Ellis, and we're going to be talking about the Court of Atonement. And I have to say, there's been a lot of traction on the dowsing and energy healing closed Facebook group as soon as this got posted. So I know that there was so much traffic going on that Amy had to set up a scheduling situation to deal with all the people that were interested. So I got curious. But I haven't had time to really learn what this is all. Amy, tell me a bit about who you are and how did you get involved in this and what is it?
All right. Well, who I am is really, I'm a singer-songwriter. That's what I do by trade. And I am I'm a closet psychic medium who, I go out of the closet and tell a lot of people what's going on. But most of the fans out there that might be tuning in might be going, "You're a what?" So just thought I'd throw that out there.
So are you country and western? What sort of songs do you write?
Yeah.
What sort of songs do you write?
Country is it. Western too, but they're two different. My dad's a cowboy singer, or a cowboy who sings, as he puts it. And he takes offense to country and western. It's one or the other.
Well, okay.
So anyway, I didn't hear what you said. It broke up a little bit.
Oh, I just said, it's not it ain't the both in the same. They're country and western.
Right. Yeah. Dad always said that western takes place outdoors and country's inside. So
I like it.
Well, what happened with getting into the Court of Atonement was just being I began channeling messages. And I have a guide whose name is Abraham. I was quite unhappy to find that the name of my guide was the same as Esther Hicks, but I've done well. It's not the same. She has a gathering of energy called Abraham, and mine seems to just be the guy. So anyway, when it's different than Abraham, I know there's lots of guides out there. So anyway, Abraham began coming to me and basically mentoring me, trying to help me out with stuff, because when I first got into this, I was about 105-degree temperature on a little tiny island off the coast of Puerto Rico called Culebra. And I had been 10 days with this horrible fever, and they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And I ended up grabbing remembering I'd read a book about a guy who had a pendulum, was able to diagnose himself. The man's name is Lou Smith, and the book is called Walking Through Walls by his son, Philip Smith. Anyway, I remembered that guy could douse and find out, diagnose illnesses or whatever. So I had a pendulum at one point and took a single class on it and got good answers. So I thought, well, if that guy could do it, so could I. So I went on to a site called mirrorwaters.com. And the lady had a really neat health dowsing thing. And when I doused it, I got that the infection was coming from my bladder. So I called my doctor and I said, "Hey, what are the chances that this infection's coming from my bladder?" And he's like, "Well, what symptoms do you have?" And I'm like, "Oh, how do I say I don't have any symptoms? I don't even know what that's like." And you can't say, "Oh, the pendulum told me," on a little Catholic island. So I like, well, it hurt a little, I think. And so anyway, he said, "Oh, well, why don't you jump on the ferry and go over to the hospital and we'll do another blood work, and this time do a urine sample." And I had E. coli off the charts. And like 3 days after they started me on the right strain of penicillin, I was better. And boy, I'll tell you what, it hooked me on being able to take care of yourselves and doing pendulum work, and then channeling, which got me into the channeling, where I found Abraham. And one day, for where the Court of Atonement came from, my husband was saying that none of his family had called him for his birthday in years, and I think it was my son's birthday, and the phone was ringing off the hook, and he said, yeah, you know, he goes, nobody in our family talks anymore. We just don't. And he said, I sure wish it were different. And so I felt kind of bad for him. So I asked Abraham, I said, Abraham, is there anything I can do that will help my husband, you know, and his family kind of get back together? And Abraham said, put him in a court of atonement. And I was like, what does that mean? So I'm Googling the word atonement, and none of it really makes sense. And I'm thinking about the jazz singer and Yom Kippur being the Day of Atonement, which meant forgiveness I got, but I didn't understand. And Abraham says, no, you're trying too hard. Just look at the word. At one meant. It means going back to being one. It's going back to wholeness. And it's giving up all the stories that are blocking you from feeling whole. And so I said, okay, I'll, teach me how to do it. So I wrote down, I type when I'm channeling. So I wrote down, give me a prayer to say to put people into a court of atonement. And it was basically, I say my whole name, Amy Josepha Richards Ellis. So as it appears on my birth certificate and my husband's last name, asked to call a court of atonement between my husband. I named him, his brother, his sisters, and all of them, and I named each one of them. And I asked that their differences be analyzed by their guides, and I asked for atonement for a healing for them on the astral plane. Well, but when his birthday came around, we didn't give it any more thought. I mean, I just threw it out there and did it. I actually listened in and heard them say, I charge you with this, I charge you with that. And I heard them all say guilty, not guilty, or guilty with probable cause. But that isn't our part. Our part is just to say it and release it. But they wanted me to hear it so that I could teach that it actually kind of is one soul faces the other soul. There's no judge. The only judge is us. And we kind of listen in. I mean, they listen to each other at a soul level and hash it out without any emotion. And they say, you did this, you did this, you did this. And the other soul says, yes, but you did this and you did this and you did that. And they go, aha, but you did this and you did this and you did that. And they go, is that how you saw it? Yeah, that's how I saw it. And they're going, I only did that because of that. And then all of a sudden, it's, I'm so sorry, and it's all apologetic. Sometimes it can't be done, and they say, life reviews for both of you from the other person's perspective, and there's no time there, so they immediately go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then they begin to say, then it came back saying, you pled guilty. I changed my thing to guilty, and they say, okay, you pled guilty. How do you plan on making restitution? And they say, well, I plan on sending customers to my brother-in-law's car dealership. I intend to send this to my sister, and calling and supporting each other. And it's all this loving, like, almost like an explosion of loving energy that comes out of it when I listened in. So of course, we just went about our business. I didn't pay any more attention to, it's basically a dream in my world. I saw this, I experienced it, but it was just inside my own head. And so for most of us who are psychic mediums, they understand we only kind of halfway believe what we do anyway. And we walked away from it. When my husband's birthday came around, all of his brothers and sisters, and there are 5, called and wished him a happy birthday. And that hadn't happened. We had moved to Puerto Rico 10 years prior, and he hadn't heard a word from any of them, not one word. And here on his birthday, birthdays had come and birthdays had gone. And here on his birthday, all these things came in, and he goes, do you think that thing you did had anything to do with this? I said, yeah, I pretty much think it probably did. Yeah. Well, I just, you know, chalked it up to coincidence and a one-time thing. And then one day I'm at my mom and dad's house, and I hear my brother and what I figured was going to be his soon-to-be ex-girlfriend arguing in the other room. And I asked again, I said, Abraham, is there anything I can do to help this situation? And Abraham said, put them in a court of atonement. And I went, you mean you can use it more than once, you know? And I called this court of atonement for him. A couple days later, my mom comes up to me and she says, Amy Jo, what did you do to your brother? I said, I didn't do anything to my brother. What are you talking about? And she says, he's getting along with everybody so well. I suspect you did something. And I said, oh my gosh, I did. I placed Jason in a court of atonement. And I said, I said, that's amazing that you noticed that. And so she said, well, what exactly did you do? And I just said, I asked to place his soul in a court of atonement with anything that's making him unhappy. And I asked for him to be, you know, his timeline to be analyzed. Any conflicts that he has out there, have them be resolved on the astral plane. And she goes, can you write that down? I'd like to look that over. And so she called me a couple of weeks later and she said, I'm having so much fun. Anybody I can think of, living or not, I just keep putting them in courts of atonement in case it helps, you know. She goes, I'm just calling in my grandma and grandpa, and, you know, and I know things weren't good between my mom and her mother, so I've put them in. She tells me all these stories and of people she's done. So this is in the booklet, so anybody who's read it. My husband and I are sitting on the couch one night, and we smell cigarette smoke so strongly that my husband gets up and walks around our house to make sure nobody's outside, because we live in the middle of nowhere. And so he said, man, it's stronger on the inside than it is on the out. We don't think anymore about it. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and the bedroom is full of cigarette smoke. And then I remembered a friend who's a psychic medium saying, oh, I smell cigarette tobacco. She says, I bet, I wonder what spirit's trying to get my attention. And I thought, is there a spirit trying to get my attention? And I always evaluate things by a rushing of energy. It either goes up or it goes down. Up for yes or down for no. And so when I asked, is somebody here? Whoop, up, yes. I went, yes, who's here? And I saw in my mind's eye a photograph I was familiar with of my grandfather that was sitting on my parents' piano. I saw that picture and I went, Grandpa Richards? Up went the energy, yes. And I went, really? Is there something I can do for you? Haven't heard from him since he died when I was 11, you know? And he said, yes, he said, I'd like for you to give your father the message that I'm very sorry things were not better between us when he was a little boy. He said to ask him to pardon me for that. I thought, oh boy, this is going to be great, because my dad don't believe a word of this stuff, you know. So I get up the next morning and I call my mom and I said, Mom, I said, had this happen. I tell her all about it. And I said, Grandpa wants me to tell Dad to pardon him for that things weren't better between them when he was a little boy. And my mom goes, oh, I put your dad and his dad in the Court of Atonement yesterday. So wow, I just that's wonderful. Yeah, I just got goosebumps and was just like 3 thoughts at the exact same time. First off, I wasn't crazy. My grandpa did show up in my bedroom. Second of all, that the Court of Atonement works. And third, you can teach it and other people can use it. And so it really started this whole adventure with that one little success, I'll say, where spirit came through. Repeatedly, they come through to us in dreams. And I had a woman the other night who I worked with one-on-one, and she's actually, I think, one of the people in your group that came in and took a one-on-one with me. And I just did some work with her and her family and problems with their parents and growing up and stuff. And she said, she wrote me a instant message the next day, and she said, hey, I had a really beautiful dream, really vivid, colorful dream with my parents, and they were on a snowmobile and they were towing all us kids behind them on a sled. And I said, and she said, do you think that healing the energy between us made this a happy dream? And I went, sounds like it's working to me. You know, sounds like everybody's happy and having fun and they appreciated it, you know.
Wow, what a gift. I wonder if you could do that between countries or between cultures, or what do you think?
I've been doing it, and I've been working on it, and I don't take any sides within the political arena. I really stay out all of the. I'm in the U.S. and I stay completely out of the U.S. politics as best I can, and just throw my support to a lot of prayer work behind whoever's going to be the president. They need all the help they can get, you know. And so there's been a lot of courts of atonement between, we'll call him Rocket Boy, and lots of heads of nations. Spirit just says he's a petulant child and not to worry about him. So,
yeah, both of them are bad boys.
Yeah, I'm saying the North Korea. They're saying that the head of North Korea is very much a petulant child, and that we shouldn't worry about too much about him. Don't give him our energy.
Yeah, both of them are petulant children.
Yep, I'd say so. So,
my
like I said,
got a bigger gun than your daddy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's an area of discomfort for a lot of people, and so the more people can think, I call a court of atonement between this. Let's not be honorable today and say this ding dong and that yahoo. Put them in a court of atonement, you know. Just any time that you see something that makes you uncomfortable, you should call a court of atonement on that. And then say, wherever it is in me that makes me feel uncomfortable, I call that into the Court of Atonement too. I find where a lot of people get to where they're looking really hard for a result. And so they want this guy to change. Hi, Jackie. I see that on the screen. She says she loves my laugh. Oh, good. Anyway, what I get is that a lot of people are looking for a result to come up, and I don't ever put them out there looking for a result. I just put them out there knowing that it's being divinely, rightly guided, because I also want to answer a question where people are asking, how does this work with free will? And the truth of it, from what Spirit tells me, is there's no infringement on free will with this, because we're doing it at the soul level. If we were grabbing a person by the arm and going, oh, you're so calling a court of atonement, right? That's interfering with their free will. But because we're doing it at the soul level, we're giving it really as a gift. We're giving it as a blessing. And the soul goes in, and the soul looks it over and decides whether it's in its best interest to accept it this time or not. And so the soul sometimes says it's better off if it just continues the way it is, much to my unhappiness at times. So then we have to just kind of trust and have faith. And then if you're going to call a court of atonement again, there's no reason to call it for the exact same thing. Think of someplace else where it might be coming from. I remember one time I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was having a problem between himself and I think a sister. And I said, okay, let's look at that. He said, hey, it did not. He said, hey, it did not come back, or I don't think that cleared, because when I was with her, she was still saying the same thing. And I said, well, let's see where else that might be coming from. And I said, you know, sometimes, and I wasn't like trying to get into the channel of it, I just said, sometimes we have like a really crazy uncle who has like, you know, racism, and he's got, you know, he's really vocal about his racism. And we put up a big block about that. And I said, so you might say, okay, well, I'm going to put my sister into a court of atonement with my uncle so-and-so. And he goes, I do have an uncle so-and-so. He is crazy racist. And are you psychic? I said, I don't normally share that information, but apparently, yeah.
So that's a question I have for you. How was it being a psychic country girl? That doesn't seem to fit together. That must have been quite an adventure for you as a child.
Well, mostly I didn't notice. Mostly I didn't. It was kind of like everything had an explanation. And so the like images, I didn't see ghosts, and I've seen like 3 ghosts in my life, and they scared the heck out of me, and I'm not really open to that. So that getting startled the heck, you know, I don't want that any part of that really. So I figured out that that's why I'm not clairvoyant and seeing spirits everywhere. But that I had what we figured was a photographic memory, because the I would get into I would be asked, this is also in the book, I was a walking phone book for my family. My mom would always say, hey, she was a real estate agent who got 1,000 phone calls, and she would say, Amy Jo, by any chance, do you remember my client? That's this Kelly, he called last week. Can you look and see if, can you remember his phone number by any chance? And I could just see where it was written down. It would immediately show up in front of me and in my mind's eye, and I would say, yeah. And it didn't last. I mean, it was there for 1/10 of a second, but I saw it enough to go, yeah. And then I kind of remembered him saying it to me, and I could tell my mom back a phone number from a month ago. And I always just knew. And people would ask me, hey, do you know how, you know, I'm trying to get this transmission into this car and I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I got a good idea. Let's go buy 12-inch bolts. And if we buy 12-inch bolts, we can put it way down there and just start screwing the thing in. Man, I'm just a kid, a little girl coming up with crazy answers to things that I didn't have any explanation of how I could know that would work, you know.
That's incredible. Did it help you at school?
It would have if I liked school at all.
Right.
I didn't study, and I got pretty good grades, so it must have done something.
Must have done something, yeah. So you have a memory for all sorts of different things, not just numbers, but does it work with people and other things like that?
Yeah, and I would block myself from names. I would say things like, I'm sorry. I thought I wasn't any good with names, but it turns out that as a singer, I'm kind of in front of a lot of people all the time, and they think that they know me and that I know them because they came to hear me sing. But to me, they were a face in an audience, and to them, they know me, you know, they know who I am. They sat with me all these hours. And so they would come up to me and say, hey, Amy Jo, how are you doing? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't place you. I'm so sorry, you know, and it would take me a minute so I thought that I didn't have that ability with names, you know. And so one day I thought I was singing at the Orange County Fair when I started it. I said, enough of me saying I'm not any good with names. That's it. I'm over that story. Today, I'm remembering names. And so every time somebody came up to me and introduced themselves, I put the image of somebody I knew with the same name over the top of their face and just had that pop in. And by the end of the day, I repeated 34 people's names as they walked out of the concert. And it became a game.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I would also use, as a singer, songwriter, I would have a big list of songs in front of me. And I would say, today it's Amy Jo, the singing psychic. I'm going to sing somebody's favorite song. And I would look around the room and go, you. And I would pick out one person, and then I would douse the list of songs to which one he was going to like. And I would sing it, and that person come up, put a $20 bill in my tip jar and go, man, you nailed that. You nailed that. I'm like, I love this game. I love this game.
Wow. A dowsing country singer with a dowsing and a Court of Atonement. That's really amazing. So I bet you're going somewhere new with this Court of Atonement. I get a feeling that you're working on something else. Is that correct?
I'm working on adding to it. What I did was I put this booklet out in its simplest form so that people would have what I had when I started, because the information's coming in like an avalanche. And I don't know about you, but I've got a couple hundred books on a shelf that I fully intended to read but didn't. And I read, pretty avid reader, but I'll still end up buying books that I can't get to. And so I thought, well, instead of putting a 200, 300 page book out on it, why don't I just put 10 pages out on it? And then as the information comes forward and I get better at it, I'll advance people with me. And they won't be being left behind. They can start right now. On the 3rd page of this booklet is the words to say that I got. And I left blanks for you to fill in the blanks. Instead of putting my family's names in, I just put them blank. You can use it right from the 3rd page. You don't even have to read the whole dang thing. Just look for the bold marks in that book, and they're all things of which you can use it. So where I'm going from here is like times when it didn't work. So you call the Court of Atonement and it didn't work. Why? And one of the big things that I've just figured out is I've known for a while that our names are sacred. They're really sacred, and that we shouldn't be taking ourselves down to these nicknames that have no power to them. And Abraham showed that to me. I'm not Catholic. I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form, but my guides are all Catholic because I was born to a Catholic family. So they said, you have the tools of Catholicism at your disposal. First, they wanted me to break any vows that I had, to ask to be released of any vows that I had for coming in to be Catholic. And then they asked me to, he asked me to learn the Lord's Prayer. And so in the Lord's Prayer, when you start looking at it, my dialogue with Abraham was like this: Our Father who art in heaven. He said, okay, what's a father? He said, who's father? And I said, well, I think you're meaning God. And he said, yes, but what is a father? What's another way of looking at that? And I said, a nurturer, the person who gave you life, the patriarch, and he said, very good. So you've got Father. Then he says, who art in heaven? Where's heaven? And to me, as a psychic medium, spirits are all around me. They're not someplace else. They're here. They're just like Earth. They're all over the place doing what they do and can come right in. And I went, well, it's all around us. And he said, now, God is omnipresent, correct? And I said, yes. And he said, you've heard the term omnipresent? I said, yes. And he goes, that means that God's everywhere. Not only everywhere, he's in everything. Every atom, every molecule has this God energy in it. So when you say that God is in heaven, where's heaven? And all of a sudden I got it. I went, in me. It's in me. If I'm my universe, center of my universe, he's in me. And he says, very good. So our Father who art in heaven, who is in me, hallowed be thy name. And what does hallowed mean? Sacred. Sacred is whose name? Thy name. Whose name is thy name? God's name, right? Look again. Thy and thine have come down to being my and mine. So when you say sacred is thy name, you are saying sacred is my name. Because God lives within me. I love it. I know. And like I said, I apologize to all the metaphysicians out there who are going, why are we having a lesson in Catholicism? I went through it, but I had to do 20 minutes for 20 minutes a day for 22 days of just studying the Lord's Prayer. That was what was requested of me. But I'll tell you what, I learned a lot. The one that really hit me the other day was, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I went, thy will be done on earth as it is inside me. Holy cow. Mm-hmm. Holy cow. When I'm not in resonance with it, I don't get it. So
I love what you're saying, because when we do the clearing work, I find myself automatically, sometimes when I really want strength behind it, I say, in my holy name, because my name has the power of God. It has the power of, when I stand in the truth of who I am and I call it down, then I'm calling all that power into this moment. So the power is in the name. I think you're absolutely right. And that adds more power when you do, when you say, I declare in my holy name, it means your foot is down. That's it. It's done.
Yes. And another thing that Abraham taught, that any of the empaths out there that might be watching or listening this, is that the fastest way to ground yourself is within your own name. So, and he said that, to state your name, I am, for me, I am Amy Josepha Richards Ellis. And I say it 3 times like this. I am Amy Josepha Richards Ellis, and only Amy Josepha Richards Ellis. I am Amy Josepha Richards Ellis, and only. And that declaration is meaning I'm pushing everything that isn't me out of my energy field. So he said, you say that 3 times, and it brings you back to center. And they kind of explain to us like that we're little soap bubbles. Okay, so if you imagine a little kid blowing soap bubbles, you got the bubbles drifting around. When the barriers of those soap bubbles are strong, they just kind of drift by each other, polarity, magnetize, get away from each other. They circle around, they move fluidly around amongst themselves. But when they're, let's call them, what do they say? I don't have a good enough barriers or boundaries. When their boundaries are weak, they pop together. And they become 2 soap bubbles become 1. So empaths use a lot of terms like hooks and vampires and things like that. The truth of the matter is, pretty much most of the time, our energy's so wide open, we're trespassing in everybody else's stuff. And that we need to call ourselves.
I've always said to others, can you imagine, these are spirits inhabiting our world and bothering us, but we must be spirits in other realms bothering them. So we have to be really careful about our own boundaries, where we begin and where we end, or we're intruding on other beings in other dimensions. We just can't rocket around and do whatever we want.
Right. Well, the thing is I'm pretty sure we don't interfere too much in the other dimensions. I don't know why I feel that way, but it doesn't feel like we're pushing out into too many dimensions. We're pretty narrow-minded, and that's why we can't see those other dimensions so much. I think they're aware of us and we're intriguing and they come checking us out, but that's kind of like going to a drive-in movie.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
A scary drive-in movie.
A scary drive-in movie, absolutely. Like I said, it's not my forte. I know a lot of people I know there are other dimensions out there, and I know that there's a lot that all I know is the more I know, the more I know I don't know. Kind of confusing, but I think it's a good teacher.
So going back to the Lord's Prayer, your insights are very, very powerful. Any other insights you want to offer that? Because what you just said was really helpful, I think, for a lot of people to understand that a lot of what we think we are saying when saying the Lord's Prayer, or we are taught, really isn't what we could benefit from if we really did know what the Lord's Prayer was all about.
Let me see if there's anything else. Well, the one thing, one area that I just fell in love with is forgive me my trespasses as I forgive those who trespass against me. And when the first time I heard the Lord's Prayer, he said, forgive me I think the first time I heard it was forgive me my debts as I forgive those who have debted against me. I didn't hear it very much growing up. And then the next time I heard it was Robert Schuller Sr. saying, forgive me my sins as I forgive those who have sinned against me. And Robert Schuller Jr. was a friend of mine, and he said a sin is a archery term, and it means to miss the mark. It means to have made a mistake. So forgive me my mistakes as I forgive those who have made mistakes against me. I ended up laying in bed one night going, okay, what's a mistake? And just like I would do with the Lord's Prayer, I was like, how else can you use the word mistake? Well, to get angry, we often think is a mistake. So forgive me where I've used anger as I forgive those who've used anger against me. Forgive me where I have been disrespectful as I forgive those who have been disrespectful to me. And I just keep flipping it back and forth. And I'll tell you what, volumes of weighted energy came off me as I played with that passage. Yeah, it's just like you're
very powerful.
Yeah, it's a big releasing technique that you can do just laying in bed and trying it. A lot of people notice that they're releasing when they are yawning. So yeah, if you find yourself yawning a lot, you're releasing.
Well, that's very powerful information, and the whole. So there's a book behind this that you're going to be writing more about in the Court of Atonement, and it seems to me that you just come up with your second booklet, which is the Lord's Prayer. Oh, the Lord's Prayer. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. That is for sure. Yeah, that's a good one. It is a good one, and it's one. The one thing is that I don't want this to be limited to only metaphysical people. I'd like to see this be able to be written in a church format that all of the religions can go out. Like I said, I'm because of the ability of spirit to contact me, it makes me have a broader view of what's going on. And I had somebody come to me, and he asked me, a spirit came to me, and he asked me in channeling to say a prayer asking for the people of Israel to be placed in a court of atonement with the promised land, with the promise of the promised land. And I said, who is this? It's Muhammad. And I'm like, I'm not touching this. Abraham, come in here and tell me what you think about all this. And they ended up having me bring in basically a court of atonement between all of the leaders and gods and things of different religions, bring them, all of the prophets, all of the different deities that are of these different religions, and place them in a court of atonement with themselves. And that came through from Muhammad. And a lot of people who were, Christian would be going, hey, Muhammad's this bad dude, and I'm like going, that's not my perception of him. He's pretty wonderful, man, So they, I think that everybody, I always put it this way. Well, I should say, I heard it this way when I was very young. A friend of mine's mother died, and they hired a Native American shaman to come in and do the ceremony. And he said, I'm going to speak her names to each direction of the wind, and then I'm going to release her soul to God. And as I release her soul to my God, will you please pray in your own language to your own God? Because there's only one God. We just have a lot of words to describe him. And I thought, that was it for me. I was pretty young when I heard that, but I thought, that's pretty good, That is really good. Yeah. And since we're all one, that kind of explains it too. So how do people get hold of you, and how do they sign up for this Court of Atonement booklet, and how much does it cost? The booklet is $5, and it's available. It's available on my. It's available at amyjosings.com. And it says Court of Atonement on one side. That's probably the easiest way I can get it to you. We can drop a link in here, and I think I just saw Jackie Rio, and I want to shout out to her. She's the one who dropped the information. She bought the book from your website, and then she got some really great responses
she called them her guinea pig family. She said, I always try out my energy stuff on my guinea pig family. And in the post that she posted, she said that she had placed her daughter in a Court of Atonement, and her daughter wrote back, "Mom, are you doing something like relationship-wise for me? Because my first boyfriend from 20 years ago called me to apologize repeatedly. It was really weird." And then
I really love that. I really love the type of work that you can do. So there's a really interesting discussion going on that you started on the Dowsing and Energy Healing closed Facebook group. So for anybody listening to this call, you can come and join us over there and see the results that other people are getting from doing this for their own family. And Amy, I hope you keep those all together and put them in as testimonials on your website so as well. So yeah, please tell us what's happening in your life and how is it working for you. I'm finding it very exciting as the tribe grows. I think we're at 1,800 people helping people, learning how to do energy healing and dowsing, and learning these new techniques like the Court of Atonement. It's a great place to come and meet your like-minded tribe.
Yes, really wonderful. It's gotten so out of control on the Court of Atonement page that I've opened a Court of Atonement book or a group to allow people to have dialogue back and forth within the group. So that's there today. If you go to the Court of Atonement Facebook page, the link to buy the book, I believe, is on there as well, and also a thing to get appointments with me, which I do on a donation basis. And you just give whatever you feel you can give, but yeah, try to I'm trying to think how to say this correctly. I need to kind of tone down. I've been doing like 90 minutes and 2 hours with each person, and I'm gonna need more time. That's all I'm thinking. So anyway,
yeah, I think about your prices. At $250 for an hour, then you can go an hour, hour and a half, or whatever you need to do, and not have to worry about it. So they're getting a really good deal, I can tell. So the thing is, you got to put it really, really reasonable. Maybe you can do something really inexpensive for 15 minutes, and then say, hey, well, that worked. 15 minutes are up.
The way I feel inside is that I know that I don't want to say anything against anybody who charges like a high dollar amount. It just doesn't feel in my nature. I am a clairsentient, and I can pick up something and I can tell you there's a story in this that's dark. There's a, I'll call them Trojan horse. You've got this really beautiful object in your house that you think is wonderful, and I can tell you there's a lot of sadness wrapped up in that piece just by the way I feel. So because I feel so much, I haven't been able to put a dollar price on it. I just tell people it's a donation basis. If you can't give me any money, don't. If you can give me something, give me something. And give me what you feel moved to give. So far, my husband's put up with it. But
well, he must be a very good husband. I'm going to make sure that you join the Entrepreneurship for the Spiritually Gifted course that I'm about to launch, so that you can have value for the gifts that you have, because with that you'll even reach even more people. So yeah, it's a learning curve that psychics need to learn, because we're so used to doing it for anybody and everybody, and even holding it back because we have so much information. We've had to learn the hard way that not everybody's ready to hear it. So we think, wow, I don't know if I should be paid for all this because I just get it spontaneously. It's second nature to me. But the answer is yes. It's time to get so.
I was going to say I believe so, and I do agree with that. But as I said, for some reason, every time I reach to put a dollar amount on it, it doesn't feel like the right thing to do. At least not yet. And that day will probably come.
Court of Atonement for you.
Court of Atonement for me, absolutely. But I do believe that energy needs to be expressed. For energy that you receive, energy expressed. And so right now, the way it's going, a lot of people are talking and a lot of energy is exploding out. And so book sales have been going up. And I was going to say, I was so delighted the day that this happened. I put myself in a Court of Atonement with freeing myself up with money. And it was about 10:30 at night. I was laying in bed and I decided that I needed to, you know, do something. I must be blocked about money. So I put myself in a Court of Atonement with money. And I woke up the next morning and I looked on my site and I had 40 sales of the book overnight. And wow. Jackie at 10:30 at night decided that she would link it to a group that she was in. And so the time was right when I just chose, off it went. And so it really is get out of your own way, people, and use the Court of Atonement. If this tool is available to you now, you know, just throw people in. I've seen a lot of people come on who are friends of mine that I know are using it. So
yeah, so don't forget that you can throw yourself in, not just everybody else, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's and that was the one thing that really came up recently. That's another part of book 2 is going to be the power of your name, and then the second aspect of that is going to be when you're looking for a behavior to change in someone else. The people are always looking for a behavior to change. They want to see this big result, and they want to see their spouse getting along with them better. They said, yes, I believe so, Jackie. She said I telepathically connected with her and told her to do it. Anyway, that's on screen. I don't know if you saw that. Anyway, so the second part of it is when you are looking for this behavior, you can go right into it and say, okay, I'm thinking that my husband is angry all the time, right? And so I placed my husband in a Court of Atonement with anger. Then I put him in a Court of Atonement with happiness, peace, and anything I can think which is the opposite of it. So you put the 2 in, and then you say, I put myself in a full Court of Atonement for all of the times of which I was angry. So you put yourself in a Court of Atonement for anything that you might be hiding, because life's a mirror, and when you point your finger at a mirror, 1 finger's pointing out and 3 fingers are pointing right back at me. So when you feel that guy should not, one of the things I love to do with the Court of Atonement is to sit down and judge somebody. If I'm having a problem with somebody at work, let me judge them. They are so condescending. They are such a know-it-all. They are this, they are that, they are this. And then I say, I call this person into a Court of Atonement with being condescending, with being a know-it-all, with being this, and that. And now I pull myself into a Court of Atonement with every time I was condescending, being a know-it-all, and doing this, and oh my gosh, I have been all that. And you find yourself yawning, and then that really ends up breaking the behavior that's been being, we're kind of like, we're broadcasting signals, and we're like sending this big broadcast out of what we need to heal within ourselves. So the more it's a problem for you in other people, the more you need to look within, or it's not going to stop.
So how do you do this, or when do you recommend to do it? Like, you do it just before you go to bed, or do you do it just any time of the day, or how do you do it?
As unceremoniously as possible. Just say, I'm walking through the parking lot and 2 little kids get pulling on a toy, and the brother pushes the sister down. I go, that one and that one, Court of Atonement now.
All right, great.
And it's that simple. You do not need to get caught up in the wording of it. You don't have to worry so much. Just do it.
I love it. Another way of showing up on planet Earth and clearing every place you go, with every thought, with every word, with every deed. Clear, 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 clear. Atonement, atonement, atonement. And if you do Ho'oponopono, he says clean, clean, clean. So we have 3 techniques everywhere we're going. We can just clean up the planet really, really quickly. I love it. Thank you ever so much, Amy Jo Ellis, for being on the show. It's been great conversation, and all the information on how to get hold of her will be in the show notes, and you'll also be able to find this show on the Academy YouTube channel. It'll also be on iTunes on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, which is October, whatever it is. So stay tuned. And if you want to head over to the Facebook page, The Wellness Show, and say, I'd like to have her back, then please do. Comments are greatly appreciated over the Dowsing and Energy Healing closed Facebook group. And any last words that you'd like to say to this tribe out here in 40 different countries?
I just want to say, keep doing it. We are making a difference in this world. We really are. And we can't judge what we see and think we're not making a difference. And I want to give a little example out there. Having lived on Culebra, Puerto Rico, when Hurricane Irma was coming toward it, I went in to do what I always did when I was there and talk to the storm and try to move it. And Abraham said, hey, you don't live there. You can't interfere. You can't intervene in their life now. You're not there. And I'm like, but all my friends are there. And he said, teach them how to do it for themselves. So I went in and I wrote this beautiful prayer on how to speak to stand boldly and declare yourself safe in the face of this storm. And when Maria was coming at them, people were saying, Amy Jo, you got any words of wisdom? I had like 5 people say, Amy Jo, where are your words of wisdom with Maria coming? And Abraham said, you gave it to them. It's up to them to remember. You already taught it in the last prayer. They've got it. It's in their notes. They've got it. Well, I had to step away from the storm, but I did get permission to go in and talk directly. Everything on this planet has a consciousness. Everything. Share and find out stuff. So, it's a surprising thing to me to find out that that was true. So I went in and I talked to Hurricane Irma, and what I got from Irma was very much like a sisterly energy, very kind. And I said, would you please, as you pass land, lift your winds above the ground a bit for the sanctity of life on earth, not just humans, because I'm not sure we all deserve it, but would you please, thinking of life on earth, would you please lift the storm? And she said yes. And boy, for the strongest storm in the history of ever watching them, she did she did major damage, but she took very few lives. And, the way I said it with Hurricane Maria, they lost 16 people in Puerto Rico with the direct hit like that. Hurricane Maria agreed as well to protect life, and we lost 16 people where there were 3 million people in that thing. It went down to a category 4 from a category 5 right as it hit. And yes, it got demolished. So did I help or didn't I? I can look at that and go, I didn't help at all. Look at that thing. What I did didn't work. It's not even worth doing it. I can look at it that way, or I can look at it and go, wow, I don't know what that would have looked like if I hadn't talked to the storm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. This is such an important topic, and it's dear to my heart. So when you turn into these hurricanes, and you have this, like a sisterly connection with that particular hurricane, what is their function? What are they telling you they are doing for planet Earth?
I didn't ask her what she was doing. I asked her to do something for me. And what I did ask for her to do for me was to pull negative energy out and transmute and neutralize a bit. I said, I don't want it to be changed to positive energy because we might not be able to handle the shift, folks. So I just asked to neutralize it. But when I talked to Maria did not feel like a sisterly energy. She felt like an old, bitter aunt. And she felt very different. And she said, yes, I'll do it. But it was, the other one was yes. And this one was, yes, I'll do it. It was and I turned to my husband and I said, I have a very bad feeling about that storm. And it was not as on track to hit it when I did that as the other one was. And so for me to have gotten those premonitions before they hit, anyway, like I had said, I do not know what benefit comes from destruction and devastation. because I cannot see the future. I don't know what homeless person is getting the help that he didn't get before. I don't know what's going to happen in the cleaning up and the togetherness of family when the house is blown apart. Family members who haven't spoken for years will come to the rescue. So I might look at that storm and that destruction and think, that's terrible, that shouldn't have happened. But with this perspective of spirit, they know stuff that we don't know, and it isn't our place to intervene. So I just, like I said, I follow direction. Abraham said, don't do it, so I didn't.
So it'd be interesting. Maybe we can do a Court of Atonement around hurricanes or storms or violent fires. And, you know,
Well,
when I tuned into the fire, well, the fire was saying, I need to clear the energy. So I understood that and said, okay, can you clear that energy with as little damage as possible to all of the life forms? You know, like there's energy that needs to be shifted planetary wise, and these are why the elements are doing. But like they do interact with humans, and like you say, they do respond to requests, but they do have to do what they're there to do.
Right. Well, I can go in and ask probably the spirit of, I would prefer to talk to Irma than Maria, but I could go in and talk with them and find out and give you an answer as to what their purpose is. But I know that when California was in that severe drought, I was actually at a shamanic gathering with a whole bunch of shamans, and I had asked the question of, what do we do in the face of a storm like this, or of a drought like this in California? You know, we have to walk this line of, you can't just ask for the rain. You know, you have to see yourself in the beautiful pastures and stuff in order to really get the what you're looking for. You put yourself where you want to be. So you don't bring in rain, rain, rain. You bring in, you know, life. Anyway, in that dialogue, my friend Jerry, he said, I do not know why drought exists, why the trees suffer so much, and why it's important for, you know, for he calls them the four-leggeds to have so much suffering. And when I laid down to go to sleep, I all of a sudden saw that we had this plague of artichoke thistle that had really grown into the pastures. And then we had a big drought, and all of that was gone, and it was back to grasslands. And then I saw there was all this mustard that had overgrown everywhere, and all of this sagebrush that didn't belong there. And after the drought, it came back grasslands again. And so I asked, are you showing me that there is a benefit to the drought? And it said, yes. The native plants that are supposed to grow there are meant to be able to tolerate it, and the strongest of those will. And there's a lot worse things on earth than dying.
Mm. Right. Well, I don't know if I want to ask that question, you know, what is worse on earth than dying, but I'm sure that that's got an interesting answer.
There's a lot worse things than dying. And the grief, shame, guilt,
right. Yeah.
Suffering. But it's not suffering. It's very specifically guilt and shame and hatred and rage. These energies are way worse than dying. And if you were to look, I have a different way of looking at things. Do you remember the book Power versus Force? And he has the levels.
Yeah, I use it all the time with my clients.
He has a level of neutrality, right? And then he goes down, and they show me where death is, and death is way above. It's like anger and all that so much, but all these there's a whole bunch of emotions that are a lot worse than death.
Right. Yeah, that's a very powerful book. And for those listening, his last book before he died, Letting Go, is really stepping stones to enlightenment and in a full body enlightenment. It's really a good read. Well, not just to read. I use it with my clients to have them move through their emotions. And the best way to do that book is really to do it as an audio book, because then you can't skip ahead. And he goes emotion by emotion by emotion. All right. This has been an incredible talk. We already got into another whole subject. Actually, we went into 3 subjects.
That's how we roll. There's a lot of information to get out. We got to do it quick.
That's right. Well, it was great having you on the show. We're just at the top of the hour now, so I'm going to say bye for now, and we'll have you back for volume 2.
All right. Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for what you do. We really, really appreciate it. I've thrown a lot of buildings in on your site.
Yeah. All right. So next week, tune in, everybody, if you're interested in learning how to clear a haunted house. We're going to be doing that on Tuesday, $33 to show up and have that experience, a 45-minute session. I'll teach you 3 ways to clear a haunted house. All right?
Ooh,
until then.
I got to check that out myself.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.
See ya.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.